Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, hello everybody. I'm delighted to address today's Galp Electric Summit initiative. When I think back at the past year, since Russia's invasion of Ukraine, the first thing that comes to mind is the human suffering and hardship it has caused for millions of people. I'm also struck by how this aggression and the resulting energy crisis has reshaped Europe's energy system. With the European Green Deal, we were already on course for a comprehensive change to transform Europe into a modern, resource-efficient and competitive economy, and to make it the first carbon-neutral continent by 2050. We had started shifting from the age of oil and gas to the age of renewables. Our targets were already ambitious. But the energy crisis of the past year created an accelerated context. Europe was suddenly in a position where our biggest gas supplier was using energy supplies as a weapon. And European consumers were the first hit by unprecedented price spikes and volatility. However, we did not flounder. Our union faced the situation head-on, remained united, and rallied around the REPowerEU plan, a plan to make Europe independent from Russian gas and accelerate the clean energy transition. Today I want to talk about this in more detail, making the case that Europe is a world energy reference. When the energy crisis first hit, our top priority was to shield Europeans from the worst of the crisis, secure our energy supply, and wean ourselves off Russian fossil fuels. And this is exactly what we did, with a number of emergency measures and the REPowerEU plan. The result speaks for itself. We have put an end to the EU's massive dependency on Russia, built over decades. Gas diversification efforts have been critical in this respect. Since September 2022, Russian gas is about 8% of all pipeline gas imported in the EU. The first gas supplier to Europe is now Norway, who has just reaffirmed its intention to maintain its current record-level supplies to Europe. We also substantially increased LNG imports from 80 billion cubic meters in 2021 to 135 in 2022. We expect this to continue at sustained levels this year. Other efforts, such as our coordinated action to reduce gas demand, have also paid off. Gas demand dropped by more than 19% between August and January 2023, which helped us save 42 BCM of gas. We have now agreed to prolong the voluntary gas demand reduction by 15% until March of next year. While all of these efforts are commendable and proof of European unity in crisis, I really want to get to renewables. Because the end goal of REPowerEU is not to replace one unreliable source of gas with another trusted source of natural gas. It's to give Europe full energy freedom by doubling down on renewables and the clean energy transition. And this brings me to the EU's efforts to overcome the structural obstacles that stand in the way of progress. Key to the REPowerEU plan is our ambitious target of renewable energy in the EU's mix by 2030. It means more than doubling the total renewable electricity generation capacity by 2030 compared to around 500 gigawatts in 2021. Early indications prove we are on the right trajectory, with new records showing that solar and wind energy are going from strength to strength. 2022 was a record year for the European solar PV market, with an annual deployment growth of 47% in the whole of Europe. This represents an increase from 27 gigawatts in 2021 to more than 41 gigawatts in 2022. And we are expecting even bigger leaps in the coming years, around 50 gigawatts in 2023 and 85 gigawatts in 2026. As for wind, around 15 gigawatts of onshore and offshore wind were installed last year. This is 34% more than in the year before. Such achievements are also thanks to the stronger renewable energy commitment in several EU countries, including Portugal. Portugal is one of the member states with a high share of renewables in its final energy consumption, and an example on deploying renewable energy solutions. And there is certainly more room to grow. On PV, the low price of auctions achieved in the past years shows great potential. Portugal's leading role in innovative forms of deployment, like floating PV, highlights its ambition to be a pioneer in innovation. Offshore wind, too, has big, unexploited potential in Portugal. You are home to the first floating wind farm in continental Europe and now planning the first offshore wind auction. And on renewable hydrogen development, you are one of the European frontrunners. To ensure Europe continues on this upward trajectory, we are working on 3 priority areas which are critical to the renewable revolution. These are physical infrastructure, policy and regulatory enablers, and a well-skilled workforce. Infrastructure is a central challenge for Europe. A greater share of renewables requires expanded and more digitalized electricity grid. Our newly proposed reform of the electricity market design will provide signals on where to invest in renewables in a way that complements infrastructure needs. Likewise, the emergence of a hydrogen ecosystem requires the progressive layout of a backbone infrastructure. We have put forward plans for a framework for the production, consumption, infrastructure development, and market design for hydrogen. Now our aim is to stimulate and support private sector investment in sustainable hydrogen production, including infrastructure needs, through our proposal for a European Hydrogen Bank. When it comes to stronger enabling provisions, simplifying and speeding up permitting is key. We took short-term emergency measures when the crisis first hit. This made a difference for specific renewable technologies and types of projects with potential for short-term deployment, like solar, repowering, and heat pumps. Now we are finalizing the structural elements to simplify and accelerate permitting. Finally, we are aware of the skills gaps in our workforce. The numbers of households installing PVs on their roof could have been higher, had it not been for the long waiting times. This was partly due to an insufficient number of installers. We will tackle this problem through our Net Zero Industry Act and our proposal for a new large-scale renewable energy skills partnership. And this brings me to my third and final point today: our plans to consolidate the EU as a powerhouse for research and innovation in clean energy tech. Up until recently, our policies had a gap: the support for manufacturing of clean technologies. The moment a technology moves to commercial deployment at scale, its manufacturing happens outside Europe. Similarly, the critical raw materials needed in the supply chain for manufacturing clean energy technologies are mainly sourced outside Europe. This leaves us open to potential supply chain disruptions, and we risk our energy security and hinder our rollout of renewable energy. It's a situation we don't want to be in. The Net Zero Industry Act will create a better business environment, a simpler context, and a market access framework for strategic technologies and the net zero projects. We want to convince companies that it is worth investing here and give clean tech manufacturing a chance to stay and grow in Europe. In parallel with the European Critical Raw Materials Act, we will diversify our sources of these materials in cooperation with reliable trade partners. In this respect, Portugal, with the largest reserve of lithium in Europe, is in a good position to become a leader in the production of lithium batteries. It's an ideal location to ramp up on innovation in the area of renewable energy storage, with the backing of our Critical Raw Materials Act and our batteries regulation. Ladies and gentlemen, before Russia's invasion of Ukraine, Europe was already on track to become a world energy reference. The war and the energy crisis that followed has catapulted us faster and further into a decarbonized future. And we are wasting no time in consolidating our achievements to ensure we transition to a green economy while also supporting industrial competitiveness and our energy sovereignty. I thank you for listening, and I wish you an excellent conference.